Alright folks, thanks for checking in Stormtopia.com and the Stormtopia.com Facebook page. We're going to have our daily weather update right now, looking towards what appears to be a significant severe weather event. By the time we make our way out to Monday, and this is being recorded as of Sunday at around 8:30 in the morning with my latest outlook on what appears to be a situation which will yield a damaging wind event within these thunderstorms. The main threat is damaging wind. Now here we are at 60 Monday. Your precip shield is extending back to the DC Baltimore area, and this is maybe a couple bursts of heavy rain, but primarily just a little bit of showers making its way on through here. And then through the day, you're starting to build up that instability out of the south, okay? And then that next shortwave arrives a little bit later in the day, and that's when we see a severe weather event extending from the interior mid-south back through the southern mid-Atlantic, okay? And we look at the main threats of this event, and you can see what we're talking about here. I'm going to talk about where these indices are valid in just a minute, but we're talking about 300 to 600 joules per kilogram of CAPE. Your lifted index is 1 below to 3 below. During a severe thunderstorm, you're going to be mixing to between 910 and 920 millibars, and your winds are going to be 40 to 60 miles per hour at that height. So you could see 40 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts in these storms. That right off the bat doesn't sound so bad. But now that we've checked off all these indices, one remains, and you say, whoa, that sounds pretty bad. Okay, 60 to 80 miles an hour, that's damaging. And that's up at 850 millibars. When you get a microburst, a macroburst, or a downburst, you could see those winds even that strong. Okay, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to decode one of these SKUTs in just a little bit so we can discuss what I mean and how you're going to get those strong winds. Okay, now let's talk about where these indices are valid for. It seems as though there's going to be isolated severe storms all the way through the New York City metro area, back into the shoreline of Connecticut, back through Pennsylvania, and the Storm Prediction Center guys have issued a slight risk all the way up through this area. Okay, and my major concern is with the Storm Prediction Center. Well, we both share a major concern across this area. Once you get south of the Pennsylvania-Maryland border, what remains undecided amongst different guidance products is whether these storms, when they were sure to have severe weather, a big severe weather outbreak in here, but the question is, when they move east, are they going to die over the Chesapeake, or are they going to slam all the way into Dover and Delaware, Maryland? Now, the question that's kind of hanging in the air right now. It's kind of be a nowcasting situation for this region, but I would say that based on what I've seen, the storms are probably going to be strong enough to bring some severe weather back in there, which is why I've extended my greatest risk area east. Okay, so let's just take a look at what Storm Prediction Center is doing right now. I think they're doing a great job on their forecast. They've got a slight risk up from the interior mid-south all the way back through not just the southern mid-Atlantic, but all the way into the northern mid-Atlantic up towards New York City. We look at their probabilities of severe weather, and you know, you could almost like take their my greatest risk area and their 30% area, and just you see how they basically cover the same areas here. They cover the southern mid-Atlantic, Virginia, West Virginia, again, Maryland, and Delaware. The eastern portions of Maryland and Delaware remain somewhat undecided. Now, it's fun to look at their maps and to say, oh, I'm a slight risk, I'm in moderate, I'm in 30% wind risk, but it's probably better and more informative and educational to read their discussions. So let's just read, I'm just going to read a snippet of their Storm Prediction Center discussion, and here we go. Alrighty. Okay. While activity along and ahead of the cold front farther north moves east-northeastward up the Ohio Valley into the central Appalachians, broad area of favorable deep layer shear is expected to cross at least marginally unstable warm sector with mid-upper flow strengthening just ahead of the cold front as a shortwave trough Appalachians strengthening just ahead of the cold front as a shortwave trough Appalachians. Alright, so I kind of lost their discussion here, but it appears as though what they're talking about is at the end that's when it becomes a little bit less techy and a little bit more, in line with what we're all thinking, will produce favorably in large. Okay, so forecast soundings suggest slight veering of height in the lowest 1 to 2 kilometers combined with surface wind speed shear will produce favorably in large hodographs for bows, as well as supercells, either within a head of convective bands. Broad swaths of damaging wind appear quite possible, hence a large size of 30% probability. So guys, we're talking about exactly what I'm talking about, with the wind threat being the highest, with bows being one of the major threats out here. Okay, and here they're really talking about bows when they have, because we could be talking about if we get a damaging wind line, even at, dare I say, derecho, those winds could easily reach in excess of 80 miles an hour, even 90 miles an hour, and it could be across hundreds of miles that stretches. So that's just one of the concerns we have of this event. Now I'm going to show you something that looks a little Star Trek-ish here, but I do want you to pay attention, and I hope my drawing on it has helped explain it a bit easier. This is called a skew-T, and this is what meteorologists use to determine wind speed, wind gusts, etc. Now let's take a look. Here, this bottom contour is the forecast time. So here we are, and this box here is our forecast time period between the morning hours of Monday and the evening hours of Monday. Okay, this is how high you're getting, and just as a reference here, this is about 850 millibars. This is where we're going to be mixing for gusts, about 910, 920 millibars, and this is the surface. Okay, and those little wind barbs that you see going around, those are how strong the winds are from your time period at your height. So you say, so we're looking, and then you say, what's with the color coding? Well, those color codings, those greens and those yellows, are where the winds are strongest, between 60 and 80 miles an hour. And the greens and the blues are 40 to 60 miles per hour. Some of the greens has a pretty wide range, from about 50 to 70 or 75 miles an hour. Okay, folks, and what I want to do here for you is just try to explain this into layman's terms of what we're going to be seeing and what this means. Now, this is a sounding for Richmond, okay, Richmond, Virginia, likely going to be in the thick of it all. And let's look at where we're going to be gusting to at this time period, 910 to 920 millibars. I have it outlined in this little box area. Okay, and then you look at the time period, you look at this area, you see a lot of greens and several blues showing up in that box, with even an isolated yellow, but mostly greens and blues. And you look at the time, and you look at the scale over here, you're looking at greens and blues, that's 40 to 60 miles per hour. Okay, and we're not seeing too many deep greens, which would be closer to 70. Now, those very damaging downbursts, those microbursts, those macrobursts up at 850 millibars, where those winds come from, that's where we're looking at yellow showing up, okay, for the time period in this exact box. And here's what we're looking at. We're looking at some yellows, occasional greens, but mostly yellows. Okay, we look to here, you can't really see it that well, but I'll tell you is that's 60 to 80 miles per hour. So that's where we get our forecast for these wind gusts and these downbursts and these microbursts. However, even a couple oranges mixed in, and that is very strong. That's in excess of 90 knots. Okay, so very strong winds are possible in excess of 90 miles, even 100 miles per hour. But likely that these downbursts don't produce too many wind speeds beyond hurricane force. Okay, so this is one skew-T, but skew-Ts are likely to be looking similar to this all across the greatest risk area. And then this isolated severe storms area, didn't talk a whole lot about, but this kind of little area in here, from New York City all the way to Philly, back through Pennsylvania, I don't see enough instability at this point for your storms to get up beyond like 950 millibars. So you can see isolated severe storms, but I don't, at this point, and the Storm Prediction Center doesn't really see your storms in that region becoming strong enough with enough instability to get up around 910. or your 850 millibars. The storms aren't going to be strong enough, okay, to penetrate those wind speeds up in the higher atmospheres. So, even though this video was quite long, I hope it was very explanatory for those of you watching it. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned to stormtopia.com, and I do know that I have a lot of viewers from this region, especially this region. So I want you guys to be sending me reports. Go to stormtopia.com. Okay, like us on Facebook. Click that link and click the like button. And of course, we can discuss the storm together, and you can give us reports. So we'll have a nice time tomorrow with these thunderstorms coming through. So stay tuned for updates.